Okay, let's bring him in. Woo-sa. CBC's Devin Heroux joining us on the program. How are you, Devin?
You're fired up. You know what? This is reminding me of 1999 Rough Rider calling shows post game. Is what it is. I'm having flashbacks. Welcome to the jungle here in
Devin's
my living
plants.
room. Yeah, downtown Toronto. It's the only thing keeping me company these days.
Why are your plants so famous, Devin?
I have no idea. I want to throw them over the balcony because I can't escape my plant fame at this point. But hey, they survived. They're survivors. I'm on the road 8, 9 months out of the year and they won't die. I've killed the cactus. I can't kill this ivy behind me. I don't know why people love them. People love food. People love plants. It's all that I see on social media these days.
Devin, boy, where do you want to start? Because there's so many things we could talk about. What's on your mind these days, please?
Well, listen, yeah, I mean, let's get right into the CFL because I just got off the phone with some CFL sources. I wanted to bring you the goods because I know a lot of people are watching. Great show as always, guys. Naylor nailed it. But what I can tell you is that the CFL later today is going to be having a meeting. What they tell me is that their government relations team is in conversations with federal ministers right now. That's a good thing for the CFL. And if you go back to what Trudeau said when he was asked after the story broke the next day, it was one of the first questions at that press conference. Will the CFL, will the federal government step up and give that money? Listen, it sounded like a non-answer from Trudeau, but in political speak, in PR speak, the fact that he said discussions are ongoing was really important. And government relations staff that the CFL have hired are very encouraged by this. It was a PR disaster on how it rolled out. The 150 million, as soon as people saw that, their eyes went wide. The horse was out of the barn. The CFL source I talked to said if they could do it all over again, they would hopefully want to start with that 30 million. It's less jarring. But listen, I think you're bang on. I don't think the CFL survives if they don't get the money. And Naylor and you're all asking it. I'm asking it. Who's paying if they don't get this money? I have asked that question over and over. I'll continue to ask it this week because I think if the CFL doesn't get that money, it's going to be an ugly day for the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, and they've faced many, and they're saying this might be the worst. And by the way, I think it was Clark told me, you got to see Devin's replies in your tweet on this last week. That obviously CBC viewers who have a different view a lot of times than mine, but people are getting very worked up about this.
I mean, that's it, right? We know it, being from Saskatchewan. People hate the CFL at times because it's kind of like the corner store league, right? It's the league we all grew up with. It was a league that on Grey Cup Sunday, we all went over to friends' homes and we celebrated the quintessential Canadian game. And so when people compile on the CFL, they're going to jump all over it. And yeah, I mean, it was ugly. I actually, that tweet you're talking about, CBC News retweeted it to its millions of followers. My tweet, beautiful, right? I had to mute that conversation because it got ugly. So for me being a CBC reporter, I think it's important to really walk people through where is the money going. These guys aren't billionaire owners. We know that the league isn't making billions of dollars. So the CFL could do itself a big favor right now in the middle of this debate on giving us some facts, giving us some details, breaking it down so that the non-sports fan who knows the CFL isn't making millions year after year and is put together by duct tape and front offices can barely keep the lights on right now. If you can give us the facts, you're going to do yourself a lot of favors in the PR world to the non-sports fans and sports fans. So that's what I'm thinking about today. I'm going to continue to track this story. I'm working my sources. As soon as I get off here, I'm going to be making more phone calls. We're going to be delivering a deep dive piece later this week on a breakdown of CFL finances, revenue, where they're getting the money from, and how the CFL came up with this $150 million figure. Nobody can answer that question right now.
Do you love this kind of stuff, Devin?
I mean, I love it and I hate it. I'm a pretty sensitive guy. So when my tweets are blowing up and I'm thrown into the middle of the storm, I sort of buckle up, like I always say, embrace for it. But yeah, I mean, look, I haven't sat this still in my life. Normally, I would be on the road. I'd be flying to events, and the fact that I have to sit around, I'm just trying to submerge myself and immerse myself in all of my work right now. So yeah, it keeps me distracted. I can make phone calls. I've never made more phone calls and Zoom calls and FaceTimes in my life. So it's fun. It's fun. I'd rather be at a curling rink. I'd rather be at, I mean, a year ago, I was following the Raptors around on that remarkable run. So what a difference a year makes, what a difference a day makes right now.
Well, to be honest with you, I appreciate you. If you're that busy, I appreciate you spending the time with us and giving us some of your time. However, as I tell these young bucks around here all the time, Devin, life's about relationships, and you and I have had a long, very good one. So I appreciate that. And I also said to the guys, the number one question I had for Devin was, you've resuscitated life into curling. Can you do the same for the CFL? You've got such a huge following there.
Well, it's been hard for me because everybody knows how diehard of Rough Riders fan I've been, right? I mean, I got my start with CBC Saskatchewan when I was 16 years old because of my fandom for the Rough Riders. I was this crazy fan getting on a Greyhound bus all by myself, going from Saskatoon to Edmonton for that 2003 West Final. Can still remember that. Pulled Neil Green a little too late in that game and put in Kevin Glenn, almost made that miraculous comeback. I can remember it like yesterday. But listen, I love the game. And so for me, it's always been difficult because I am such a diehard, and yet the CBC journalistic standards and practices says I have to be a little more objective when it comes to the Great Canadian Football League. I think I've always done that. The last 2 years, I've had to write about the Bombers beating the Rough Riders in the playoffs. You can imagine how painstaking every keystroke was for that. But I will do everything I can to make Canadians care. You should see our daily sports meetings when I state my cases for the Canadian Football League and why it needs to be on the CBC Sports website. I love the game. I'm going to bring those curling fans over to the Great Canadian Football League. And Naylor said it. He thinks the government will step up and give money. From what I'm hearing from my sources, this isn't my opinion. This is what I'm hearing. My analysis is that the government is looking at ways to get the money. And the one thing that I think has been left out of this conversation, the Heritage Minister announcing a couple of weeks ago, $500 million for art, sport, and culture. And I understand right now they're looking and combing over that $500 million, trying to move some of that now to the Canadian Football League. I'll keep you posted on all of those updates.
Oh, good. Thank you. So from producer Clark, he says, what does Devin think about the shakeup in Saskatchewan men's curling recently? Like an atomic bomb went off in men's curling in Saskatchewan last week or the week before. Are you following it?
I am following it. And you know what? I think it's a really good thing. And I was reflecting on Dunstone. I think the guy's got the goods. And then I thought about Gushu, right? So Gushu out of Newfoundland and Labrador, 13 years he went to the Brier, should have won it, could never win it. Then the Brier returned to St. John's 3 years ago. I watched that final again last night because I can't get enough curling. But Gushu took 13 years to get to the pinnacle of his game, and now he's won 3 out of the last 4. I think when we see people like Cooey and Gushu and Jacobs, when they sort of fall off the scene, I think Saskatchewan's going to return to granite glory. 40 years is enough, and I think Dunstone's going to take us to the promised land.
Wow. I love it. Racket! Racket! I know that's going to go viral with the curling guys. Devin, anything else?
Hey, man, I'm just living day to day. You say it best, that's all we have. That's all we have is today. There's been some ups and downs. I've never been so introspective in my life. Just being still, taking it all in, putting out the stories. Let me finish by saying I had the great honor of talking to Humboldt Broncos Grayson Cameron. Of course, what a remarkable journey he's been on. 2 years ago, breaks his back in that horrific crash. Now commits to the NCAA Northland College team. I had an hour conversation with him the other day. He's at home in Olds, Alberta. And you know what, Rod and Darren, the thing that stands out to me about this journalism career that I never thought I would be on is that I always get the beauty of perspective. When I think I have it bad, when I think I'm having a bad day, I talk to these people who have overcome so much, who are so inspiring. And so to me, that's what I'm thinking in these inspiring stories, these people I talk to who say, hey, it's not as bad as I thought it was, and just soak up today. That's all we have.
Thanks for this again. I appreciate our friendship so much. Keep in touch, man. Glad to see you're doing so well.
Great stuff, guys. Thanks as always.
Devin Heroux from CBC Toronto joining us, and a Saskatoon lad originally.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.